Welcome to Faith and Finance channel. My name is Shimi, your host for today, and this session is called David and Goliath, What's in It for Me? This is part of John Hoyle's series on doing finances in a godly way. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Shimmy, and it's a welcome from me, John Hoyle, as we look at the story of David and Goliath in a different way, I think, than people have approached it in the past, because I do want to look at that, as it were, the financial side of the story. But before going any further, let's go back to Shimmy, who will remind us of the basic story of how what was happening when we're in 1 Samuel chapter 17, which has the story of David and Goliath. Over to you, Shimmy.
Well, 1 Samuel 17. This is Sunday school stuff, so I should know this. So basically, from what I remember, the Israelites were on a face-off as such with the Philistines, and this was in the Valley of Elah, and essentially, really, they needed a hero to represent the Israelite army because nobody wanted to fight the giant Goliath. So David comes along and he volunteers himself in a single combat with the giant, and David wins. The Israelites win, and they plunder the Philistines. Is that right, John?
Fine, well, thanks very much, Shimmy. That's the way it was taught, and certainly I remember all this from Sunday school. But I want to pick it up from verse 24. David has arrived, okay. Goliath issues his challenge, which he's done for 40 days, and no Israelite has responded. And the men of Israel see Goliath, and again they flee. So, and then verse 25, David is kind of listening to this quite intently. So it's important that we get this. So the men of Israel said, "Have you seen this man, Goliath, who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. So it shall be that the man who kills him, the king will, 1, enrich him with great riches, 2, will give him his daughters in marriage, and 3, exempt this man's family from taxes in Israel." So that was kind of almost like winning the lottery for a teenage shepherd boy to arrive at this camp, to hear this being spoken. And then David, verse 26 now, then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, "What shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel?" I think at this point, David, a lad of great faith, who knew that it was his destiny to kill this giant Philistine Goliath. But at the same time, he was thinking ahead and saying, well, what's in it for me? And there's nothing wrong with that. He was looking kind of at the financial side of all this, because and this is not to say anything against David at all. He was a man after God's own heart, a teenager, I think, at this time, but he was quite clear that he was going to go into the Valley of Elah and kill Goliath. And alongside that, he was saying, he was asking, well, what's going to be given to the man who does this? And the answer is riches. You marry into Saul's family, the ruling family of Israel at that time, and your family gets an exemption from taxes. Well, these were huge benefits. So moving on to verse 27, David is speaking and said, what's going to be done for the man who takes away this reproach from Israel? Verse 27, and the people answered him, saying, so shall it be done for the man who kills him, which is going back to verse 25 to say, the man who kills him will get riches, go marry into Saul's family and be exempt from tax. So at this point, David is making sure that he's heard everything correctly, and to the point where his older brother, Eliab, we're now in verse 28, has an angry exchange with David, and sort of saying, "Why have you come here, David? What's all this about?" David replies in verse 29, "What have I done now? I'm just asked a question." And then verse 30, David again turns from Eliab towards the other people and said the same thing, and these people answered him as the first ones did. So again, David is making sure that he's heard everything correctly, that the man who kills Goliath will have the things promised to him, and that is common knowledge throughout the Israelite army. Then verse 31, David's words are reported to Saul, and then I think we know that the rest of the story, David goes into the valley, first of all knocks Goliath out and then kills him. So the point I'm just going to get across is that this story is often presented of David being a fairly naive shepherd boy who just goes into the valley, doesn't really think about anything else. But verses 25 onwards give us a different picture, and there's nothing wrong with that, because if we're doing financial things or we're trying to do things God's way, then I believe financial benefits will follow. But the point is that we put God's interest first. David saw Goliath as the enemy of Israel as he was, and he determined to act upon it. So it was a godly action which brought him benefits, which we don't often hear about. And to take the story forward, eventually David did get riches. He invested a lot. So eventually David did become rich. He contributed a lot of money to the building of the temple, which his son Solomon completed. He did marry one of Saul's daughter, not the oldest daughter, because there was a contention between Saul and him, which meant he would not marry the oldest daughter through Saul's intervention, but he did marry Micah. And thirdly, I think we just take it that his family was exempt from taxes in Israel. So what he had purpose to do, David, and the rewards that came his way actually came to pass. And it's just an aspect of the story as we look at financial aspects of it that is not very often referred to or talked about. And I feel, we just need to be aware of doing things in a godly way that will bring us rewards if we put the Lord first. Jesus said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all this will be added to you." And certainly David was an Old Testament example of that. So I hope you found this useful. I'll just now hand back to Shimmy to wrap up this session, and thanks for watching.
All right. Wow. I have to admit that I never really saw that story that way before. I just always thought that David killed Goliath and he did it for selfless reasons. I just always thought that David killed Goliath for selfless reasons because he wanted to champion for his nation. I never really thought that David was thinking about himself as well and his family and what benefits he was going to get from defeating Goliath. So thank you, John. The whole financial aspect of it, and knowing that you can expect a reward when you take care of God's interest first, that there is a reward for that, because the Bible does say that God is a rewarder for those who diligently seek Him. So I look forward to hearing more of these of this series from John and doing finances in a godly way. And thank you everyone for watching.